I should have known something was wrong the moment my daughter stopped returning my calls. For 3 weeks, Emma had been distant. Short texts. Vague excuses. Always busy with the new house, she said. Always coordinating with Derek, her husband of 2 years. They were preparing for something big, she told me. A surprise. Something they wanted to share with the whole family. I told myself it was normal. Young couples get wrapped up in their own world. They're building a life together. I was just her father, after all. Not the center of her universe anymore, but the silence still hurt. My wife Patricia tried to reassure me during those weeks. "Richard, you're overthinking this," she'd say. Folding laundry in our modest living room, the same room where we'd raised Emma and her younger brother Tom. She's excited about the house. You know how she gets when she's planning something? I wanted to believe her. I really did. The invitation came on a Tuesday afternoon. A formal card in the mail, cream-colored cardstock with gold lettering. "You're invited to celebrate our new beginning," it read. "Join us for the grand reveal of our forever home." The address was in Riverside Estates, one of those new developments on the north side of town where the lot started at. $500,000. My stomach dropped when I saw it. I'm a high school math teacher. I've been one for 32 years. Patricia works part-time at the library. We live comfortably, but we're not wealthy. We'd helped Emma through college, paid for a good chunk of her wedding, and given her and Derek $10,000 as a down payment gift when they bought their first starter home 3 years ago. That starter home was supposed to be temporary, sure. But Riverside Estates? That was another world entirely. How did they afford this? I asked Patricia, holding the invitation like it might burn me. She didn't answer right away. She just pressed her lips together in that way. She does when she's worried but doesn't want to say it out loud. The day of the reveal arrived with perfect weather. Sunny, 72 degrees, not a cloud in the bright May sky. Patricia wore her good dress, the navy one she saves for special occasions. I put on slacks and a button-down shirt, the same outfit I'd worn to Emma's wedding. As we drove through the gates of Riverside Estates, I felt increasingly out of place. The houses here weren't just homes. They were statements. Modern architecture, 3-car garages, manicured lawns that looked like they'd been trimmed with scissors. Everything gleamed with newness and money. Emma and Derek's house sat at the end of a cul-de-sac. It was a sprawling 2-story contemporary with massive windows and a facade that mixed stone and dark wood. There had to be at least 4,000 square feet under that roof. Maybe more cars lined the street. I recognized some of them. Derek's parents, Martin and Claudia, had arrived in their Tesla. Derek's brother and sister-in-law were unloading a large wrapped gift from their Range Rover. I counted at least 15 other vehicles. Most of them luxury brands I could barely afford to look at. Our 12-year-old. Honda felt like a rusty bicycle in a Porsche dealership. "It's beautiful," Patricia whispered as we walked up the stone pathway to the front door. Her voice carried a mix of awe and something else. Apprehension, maybe? The door opened before we could knock. Emma stood there, radiant in a white sundress, her blonde hair pulled back in an elegant ponytail. She looked so much like Patricia had at her age that it made my chest ache. "Mom? Dad?" She hugged us both, and for a moment, everything felt normal. "I'm so glad you're here. Come in, come in." The interior was even more impressive than the exterior. Vaulted ceilings, an open floor plan that seemed to go on forever, designer furniture that probably cost more than my annual salary. The kitchen had marble countertops and appliances that looked like they belonged in a professional restaurant. Through the massive windows, I could see a backyard with an infinity pool that seemed to blend into the horizon. People milled about everywhere. Friends, family, colleagues. Everyone held champagne flutes and made appreciative noises about the house's features. I spotted Derek across the room, holding court near the fireplace with a group of men I didn't recognize. He wore expensive jeans and a fitted blazer, his dark hair perfectly styled. He looked every inch the successful young executive. When had that happened? Last I knew, Derek worked in sales at a medical supply company. Good job, sure, but not this kind of money. What do you think? Emma asked, her eyes bright with excitement. Isn't it amazing? It's incredible, sweetheart, Patricia said, squeezing Emma's hand. How did you two manage all this? Something flickered across Emma's face, brief, almost imperceptible. Oh, you know. Derek got a big promotion. We've been saving. Made some smart investments. She waved her hand vaguely. Plus, Derek's parents helped us out with the down payment. The words hit me like a slap. Derek's parents helped with the down payment, not us. Not the people who'd given them $10,000 3 years ago. Not the parents who'd scraped and saved to help their daughter start her life. I must have made some expression because Patricia touched my arm gently. That's wonderful, she said smoothly. We're so happy for you both. Emma smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Let me show you around. The tour was excruciating. Emma walked us through each room with the enthusiasm of a real estate agent. The master suite, with its spa bathroom and walk-in closet the size of our bedroom. The home office with built-in bookshelves and a view of the pool. The guest rooms, each decorated in a different style. The game room with a bar and a pool table. The wine cellar in the basement, and with each room. I felt myself shrinking. This was what our daughter valued now. Space, luxury things. We ended the tour back in the main living area, where Derek had gathered everyone's attention. He stood on a raised hearth by the fireplace, Emma beside him, both of them glowing with pride. Thank you all for coming, Derek began, his voice carrying that smooth confidence of someone who'd never questioned his place in the world. Emma and I wanted to share this moment with the people who matter most to us. He launched into a speech about their journey, how they dreamed of this house, how hard they'd worked, how grateful they were, and then he started the acknowledgments. I have to thank my parents first, Derek said, gesturing to Martin and Claudia. Mom, Dad, without your generosity and support, none of this would have been possible. The down payment you gave us was the foundation of everything. People applauded. Martin nodded modestly, though Claudia beamed like she'd just won an award. And to my brother Jake, Derek continued, thanks for the investment advice that helped us grow our savings so quickly. More applause. Derek went on. He thanked his mentor at work. He thanked the real estate agent. He thanked the contractor. He thanked people whose names I didn't even recognize. I waited for Emma's parents to be mentioned. I waited for some acknowledgement that we'd helped them too, that we'd been part of their journey. Derek raised his champagne glass. So here's to new beginnings, to family who supports our dreams, and to the incredible future ahead of us in our forever home. Everyone cheered and drank. No mention of us. Not a single word. Patricia's hand found mine, her grip tight. I looked at Emma, hoping for some sign that she'd noticed the omission, that she'd speak up. She was smiling, clinking glasses with Derek. Basking in the moment, I felt invisible. The rest of the party passed in a blur. People congratulated Derek and Emma. They oohed and ate over every detail of the house. Derek's mother, Claudia, held court in the kitchen, accepting compliments as if she'd personally designed the place. I found myself standing alone on the back patio, staring at that ridiculous infinity pool. Quite something, isn't it? I turned to find Martin, Derek's father, beside me. He held his champagne flute with the ease of someone used to good things. Yes, I managed. Quite something. Derek's done well for himself, Martin said. I'm proud of him. Proud we could help make this happen. There was something in his tone. Not quite condescending, but close. A subtle implication that his help mattered more, that his contribution was the real foundation. We helped too, I said quietly. 3 years ago. $10,000 for their first house. Martin looked at me with what might have been pity. Of course, every bit counts. He sipped his champagne. Though I suppose 10,000 doesn't go as far as it used to. He walked away before I could respond. I stood there, my hands shaking, wondering when I'd become so insignificant in my own daughter's life. The drive home was silent. Patricia stared out the window. I gripped the steering wheel too tight, my knuckles white. Maybe Derek just forgot, Patricia finally said as we pulled into our driveway. Our modest, ordinary driveway in our modest, ordinary neighborhood. He didn't forget, I said. Neither did Emma. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the party. The omission wasn't an accident. It was a choice. A statement about who mattered and who didn't. I thought about all the years I'd spent raising Emma, teaching her to ride a bike, helping with homework, attending every school play, every recital, every parent-teacher conference, working summer jobs to save for her college fund, driving her to campus for freshman orientation, walking her down the aisle at her wedding, and now I was worth less than a footnote in her success story. The anger came slowly, building like a storm on the horizon. Not explosive, not violent, just a cold, determined fury that settled into my bones. I'm a patient man. I've spent 3 decades teaching teenagers algebra and geometry. I know how to play the long game. I know how to solve problems that seem impossible, and I know how to teach lessons that stick. Over the next few days, I did something I'd never done before. I dug into Derek's life. It wasn't hard. People put everything online these days. LinkedIn profiles, social media posts, public records. Derek was proud of his success, and proud people leave trails. His big promotion wasn't quite what he'd made it sound like. He'd moved from sales to senior sales, a lateral shift with a modest pay bump. Good, but not extraordinary. His investments? Mostly lucky timing in a bull market. Nothing sophisticated, but here's what I found that mattered. Derek had leveraged himself to the absolute limit to afford that house. The mortgage was enormous. Add in the car payments on their 2 luxury vehicles, the furniture financing, the country club membership he'd recently joined, and Derek and Emma were living paycheck to paycheck at a very high level. One financial shock, one unexpected expense, and their house of cards would collapse. I also discovered something else. Derek had a pattern of taking credit for other people's work at his company. Glowing reviews from his team that never mentioned him, colleagues who'd left subtle complaints in exit interviews. He was good at climbing the ladder by stepping on others. The picture became clear. Derek wasn't a successful executive. He was a successful performer, a man who'd mastered the art of looking impressive while operating on a foundation of debt and borrowed credibility. And my daughter had either been fooled by it or had chosen to ignore it. I spent 2 weeks considering my options. I'm not a vengeful person by nature. I don't believe in cruelty for its own sake, but I do believe in consequences. I believe that people need to learn from their mistakes. Emma and Derek had made a mistake. They'd chosen to erase us from their narrative, to pretend that our help, our love, our years of support didn't matter. I decided they needed a reminder. The first step was subtle. I reached out to an old student of mine, Michael Chen, who'd gone on to become a financial advisor. We met for coffee, and I asked him hypothetical questions about over-leveraged homeowners. What happens when interest rates rise? What happens when variable expenses increase? What safety nets do people need? Michael gave me exactly what I needed. A clear picture of Derek and Emma's vulnerability. The second step required more finesse. I called Derek's company, pretending to be a potential client interested in their products. I asked specifically for Derek, said I'd heard great things. The receptionist connected me to his voicemail. I left a message expressing interest but asking detailed technical questions about the product line. Derek called me back within an hour, not recognizing my voice. I asked increasingly specific questions, pushing into areas where his knowledge was shallow. He stumbled, recovered with sales speak, stumbled again. I thanked him politely and said I'd be in touch. Then I called back the next day and asked for his supervisor. I explained that I'd spoken with Derek but needed more technical expertise for my decision. Could I speak with someone more senior? The supervisor, eager for a sale, answered all my questions thoroughly. I praised his knowledge, mentioned that Derek had tried his best but seemed a bit out of his depth on the technical details, and said I'd be making a decision soon. I never called back, but the seed was planted. Derek's supervisor now had a small doubt about Derek's expertise. A tiny crack in the image Derek had built. The third step was the most calculated. I knew Derek's company was hiring for a director position. I knew because Derek had posted about it on LinkedIn, complaining that they were looking for external candidates instead of promoting from within. I also knew Derek would apply, through Michael. I connected with someone on the hiring committee, not directly, through a friend of a friend. 3 degrees of separation. I never mentioned Derek's name. I simply shared general concerns about candidates who were great at presentations but weak on substance, about the importance of checking references thoroughly, about looking beyond the polished surface. I planted the idea of skepticism. When Derek applied for the director position, I knew the committee would scrutinize him more carefully than they might have otherwise. They'd notice the inconsistencies, the overselling, the thin technical knowledge beneath the confident delivery. I didn't sabotage Derek. I simply ensured he'd be evaluated honestly instead of skating by on charm. He didn't get the promotion. The position went to an external candidate with a stronger technical background. Derek posted about it on LinkedIn with forced optimism. Not the outcome I hoped for, but excited to keep growing in my current role. I imagined the stress this added to his financial situation. No promotion meant no pay increase. No pay increase meant the margins got even tighter. But I wasn't done. The 4th step targeted something more personal. Derek's pride. He'd joined an exclusive golf club as part of his networking strategy. Monthly dues, equipment costs, the whole performance. He posted photos from the course, always with other successful-looking men. Always with captions about building relationships and investing in connections. Knew someone who was a long-time member of that club. Someone whose opinion carried weight. I arranged to run into him at a community event, purely by accident, of course. We talked about the club. I mentioned I'd heard it was becoming more accessible, accepting newer members who were more about flash than substance. I wondered aloud whether that would change the culture. My acquaintance frowned at that. He took pride in the club's exclusivity. A month later, the club raised its dues significantly and implemented a new sponsorship requirement. Existing members now needed to long-standing members to vouch for their continued membership. Derek posted a vague message about reevaluating priorities and quietly let his membership lapse, another expense cut. Another piece of his image chipped away. I watched from a distance as the pressure built. Emma started posting less about their house and more about learning to appreciate the simple things. Derek's LinkedIn updates became less frequent, less boastful. They were struggling. Not catastrophically. Not in a way that would destroy them, but enough to feel the weight of their choices. And still they hadn't reached out. Not to apologize. Not to reconnect. They'd gone silent again, pulling back from family gatherings, making excuses fine. I could wait. The real catalyst came 6 months after the house reveal. Emma's car broke down. Not a minor issue. A major transmission failure. $8,000 to repair. Their warranties had expired. The dealership wouldn't budge on the price. I only knew because Tom, Emma's brother, mentioned it to Patricia. Emma had called him, stressed and crying, asking if he knew any good mechanics who might give them a payment plan. Tom, who still lived at home while finishing his graduate degree, who drove a used Toyota, who'd never asked us for anything beyond the support we freely gave. Patricia wanted to call Emma immediately. To offer help, I told her to wait. But she's struggling, Patricia said, her eyes pleading. She's our daughter. She's an adult who made choices, I replied. She chose to prioritize Derek's parents over us. She chose to erase our contribution from her success story. She needs to understand that choices have consequences. You're being cruel. Being a teacher, Patricia. Didn't speak to me for 2 days after that, but she didn't call Emma either. Emma eventually borrowed money from Derek's parents for the car repair. I knew because Derek posted a carefully worded thank you on Facebook, praising his parents' unwavering support in unexpected times. Still no mention of us. The interesting thing about financial pressure is how it reveals character. As Derek and Emma struggled to maintain their lifestyle, cracks appeared in their relationship. Emma started posting quotes about authenticity and knowing who your real friends are. Derek's posts became defensive, justifying his choices, explaining his vision. They were fighting. Not publicly. But the signs were there for anyone who knew how to read them. And then came the holidays. Thanksgiving approached. And traditionally, we alternated years between families. This year was supposed to be our turn to host, but Emma called 3 weeks before and asked if we could come to their house instead. "We have so much space now," she said, her voice carrying a forced cheerfulness. It would be silly not to use it. Translation: Derek's family would be there, and Emma wanted to show off the house again. Wanted to prove they were still doing great despite the struggles. Patricia looked at me when she got off the phone. "What do you want to do?" she asked. I thought about it. Really thought about it. "We'll go," I said. "But we're going to do it right." Here's what most people don't understand about revenge. Real revenge isn't about destruction. It's about revelation. It's about holding up a mirror and making people see themselves clearly. I spent the week before Thanksgiving preparing. I bought groceries. Good groceries. The kind we usually bought for special occasions. I made dishes I knew Emma loved. My mother's stuffing recipe. Patricia's famous sweet potato casserole. The cranberry sauce Emma used to beg for every year. I also prepared something else. A gift. When we arrived at Emma's house on Thanksgiving, the contrast was immediate. Last time the place had been pristine, showroom perfect. Now it looked lived in. Dishes in the sink. Mail piled on the counter. Little signs of stress everywhere. Derek's family was already there, of course. Martin and Claudia holding court. Derek's brother and sister-in-law making themselves comfortable like they owned the place. Emma hugged us at the door, and I felt how thin she'd gotten. Stress, weight loss. Her smile was tired. "You brought food," she said, looking at our dishes with something like relief. "Of course," Patricia said. "We wouldn't come empty-handed." The Thanksgiving meal was tense. Derek kept steering conversation toward his work, his plans, his vision for the future. Martin nodded along approvingly. Claudia made little comments about how lucky Emma was to have married such an ambitious man. I stayed quiet through most of it. Just watched. But then, during dessert, Derek's brother Jake brought up the house reveal. "Remember that party back in May?" he said, laughing. "Derek, you gave such a great speech. Really showed everyone how to celebrate success properly." "It was a good day," Derek agreed, his voice carrying that familiar pride. "I remember that speech," I said quietly. Everyone looked at me. I'd been so silent all evening that my voice seemed to surprise them. "You thanked a lot of people," I continued. "Your parents, your brother, your mentor, the real estate agent." I paused. "It was very thorough." Derek's smile faltered slightly. "Yeah, well, we wanted to acknowledge everyone who helped us." Everyone. I let the word hang there. Emma put down her fork. She knew what was coming. "Dad," she said softly. "Please don't." "Don't what?" I asked, looking at her directly. "Don't mention that we gave you $10,000 for your first house. Don't mention that we helped you get started. Don't mention that apparently we didn't matter enough to acknowledge." The table went silent. Martin cleared his throat. "Richard, I'm sure it was just an oversight." "Was it?" I turned to Derek. "Was it an oversight? Or did you decide our contribution wasn't worth mentioning? That $10,000 from a teacher and a librarian doesn't count as much as whatever your parents gave you." "It's not about the amount," Derek started. "You're right," I interrupted. "It's not. It's about respect. It's about remembering where you came from. It's about recognizing the people who helped you before you got so caught up in appearances that you forgot what actually matters." Derek's face flushed red. "I didn't forget anything then." "Why?" I asked simply. "Why did you erase us from your story?" He didn't have an answer. I stood up and walked to where we'd left our coats. From my jacket pocket, I pulled out an envelope. Inside was a check. Not for them. "For us?" "I did some math," I said, returning to the table. $10,000, invested in a basic index fund 7 years ago, when we first gave it to Emma for her college graduation, would be worth about $18,000 now. I placed the envelope in front of Derek. "This is a check for $18,000, made out to Patricia and me. I'm giving you 2 options. Option 1. You cash this check by selling something. The boat in your garage you never use. The designer furniture you financed. Something. And you pay us back with interest for the help you forgot to acknowledge. Derek stared at the check like it was a snake. Option 2, I continued, is you tear up this check right now, and in exchange, you stand up at this table, in front of your family, and you tell everyone here exactly how much we gave you. You acknowledge our help. You apologize for erasing us. And you mean it, Dad. Stop, Emma said, tears in her eyes. Why? I asked her, why should I stop? You stopped calling us. You stopped including us. You built this beautiful life and decided we weren't fancy enough to be part of the narrative. That's not fair, she whispered. Isn't it? Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me you didn't choose Derek's version of success over us. She couldn't. The table remained frozen. Derek's parents looked uncomfortable. Jake and his wife studied their plates. Finally, Derek reached for the envelope. For a moment, I thought he'd choose the money, that he'd really cash that check and pay us back, just to avoid the admission. But Emma put her hand on his. No, she said. She looked at me, her eyes red. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry. We were wrong. Both of us. She turned to everyone at the table. My parents gave us $10,000 when we bought our first house. It was a huge sacrifice for them. They've always been there for us, and at the house reveal, we didn't even mention them. We were so caught up in impressing everyone, especially Derek's family, that we forgot what actually mattered. Her voice broke. I forgot what mattered. Derek sat rigid beside her. Derek, I said quietly, your turn. He looked at me with something between anger and shame. But slowly he nodded. You're right, he said finally. We should have thanked you. Your help was important. I'm sorry we didn't acknowledge it. It wasn't eloquent. It wasn't profound. But it was something. I picked up the envelope and tore the check in half, then in quarters, then into tiny pieces that I left in a small pile on the table. There was never any money, I said. Just a blank check and a lesson. I looked at Emma, then at Derek. You have this beautiful house, these expensive things, and you're miserable. I can see it. The stress, the fighting, the constant performance. You're drowning in a life you can't actually afford, trying to impress people who don't actually care about you. I gestured around the table. We're not rich. We never will be. But we're happy. We live within our means. We don't owe anyone anything. And we don't forget the people who helped us along the way. I stood up. Patricia stood with me. Thank you for hosting, I said formally. The turkey was excellent. We left our dishes. We left the torn check. We left Emma crying at the table and Derek sitting in stunned silence. We drove home in our old Honda. And for the first time in months, I felt light. 3 days later, Emma showed up at our house, alone. She looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes. Hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wore jeans and an old sweater, not the designer clothes she'd been favoring lately. Patricia let her in without a word and made tea. We sat in our small living room, the three of us, and for a long time, nobody spoke. I've been an idiot, Emma finally said. Yes, I agreed. She laughed, a broken sound. I thought I wanted all of this. The big house. The impressive life? I thought it would make me happy, has it? No. She cupped the tea mug in her hands. We're underwater, Dad. The mortgage, the cars, the furniture. We can barely make the payments. And Derek, he just keeps pushing for more. Bigger, better, more impressive. What do you want? Patricia asked gently. Emma looked around our living room. At the worn couch, where she'd spent countless hours reading as a kid. At the bookshelf stuffed with paperbacks and family photos. At the simple, comfortable life we'd built. I want to feel like this, she said. Safe, real, not constantly performing. Then you need to make some changes, I said. Over the next hour, we talked. Really talked. Emma admitted she'd been unhappy for over a year, that Derek's ambition had become consuming, that she missed us but had been too ashamed to reach out after how they'd treated us. I didn't make it easy for her. I asked hard questions. Why did she let Derek erase us? Why did she prioritize his parents? Why did she stop being our daughter and start being his accessory? She didn't have good answers, just honest ones. She'd gotten caught up. She'd wanted to fit into Derek's world. She'd been afraid that admitting our help would make them look less successful. You know what's funny? I said, if Derek had just thanked us at that party, none of this would have happened. I would have been proud. We would have been happy for you. But the erasure, that's what I couldn't accept. I know, Emma whispered. I knew it even then. I saw your face, Dad. I saw how hurt you were. And I didn't say anything. Why not? Because I was a coward. At least she was honest. Before Emma left, I gave her some advice. Financial advice from my years of living modestly and saving carefully. Ways to restructure debt. Things they could sell. Lifestyle changes that might help. You need to decide what kind of life you actually want, I told her. Not what looks good. What feels good. What's sustainable. She hugged me at the door, really hugged me, the way she used to before all of this. I love you, Dad. I'm sorry. I love you too, I said. But sorry isn't enough. You need to change. Over the next few months, I watched from a distance as Emma and Derek made decisions. They sold one of their cars and bought a used sedan. They put their boat up for sale. They canceled various subscriptions and memberships. Small steps, but steps in the right direction. Derek resisted at first. I heard from Emma. He wanted to maintain the image. But Emma put her foot down. Either they made changes, or she was leaving. The marriage had reached a crisis point. And in that crisis, something shifted. Derek started going to therapy. Individual therapy, then couples therapy with Emma. He began examining why he needed external validation so badly. Why he measured his worth by others' perception. It wasn't a fast transformation. But it was real. In March, almost a year after the house reveal, Emma invited us to dinner. Just the four of us. At their house, but different this time, the furniture had changed. Less designer, more practical. The house felt more like a home and less like a showroom. They'd even gotten a dog, a rescue mutt, who greeted us at the door with enthusiastic tail wags. Over dinner, Derek did something I never expected. He apologized. Really apologized. I was so focused on proving myself that I forgot to be grateful, he said, looking me in the eye. Your help mattered, it did. And I'm sorry I made you feel like it didn't. Thank you, I said simply. We ate. We talked. We laughed. It wasn't perfect. Relationships aren't repaired in a single evening. But it was a start. As we were leaving, Emma walked us to the car. I learned something this year, she said. Real wealth isn't about what you own. It's about who shows up when things fall apart. Who showed up? I asked you did, she said, even when I didn't deserve it. You showed up. I hugged my daughter and felt for the first time in a long time that we'd turned a corner. Derek and Emma put their house on the market that spring. They bought a smaller place in a more modest neighborhood. 3 bedrooms, normal yard, completely manageable mortgage. Emma told me later that Derek had cried when they signed the papers. Not because he was sad to leave the big house, but because he finally felt free from the pressure of maintaining it. They started coming to family dinners again. All of them, not just the ones hosted at their place. Derek's parents came too sometimes, and gradually, Martin's subtle condescension faded. Maybe because Derek stopped seeking his validation. Maybe because the dynamic shifted. I don't know if my actions were right or wrong. I don't know if I was justified in my calculated revenge, or if I should have just talked to Emma from the start. But I know this. Sometimes people need to hit bottom before they can climb back up. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let them face consequences. Sometimes love means teaching hard lessons instead of offering easy comfort. My revenge wasn't about destroying Derek and Emma. It was about forcing them to see what they'd become, to recognize the cost of their choices, to understand that respect and family matter more than appearances. Did it work? I think so. My daughter is happier now in her smaller house than she ever was in that Riverside Estates monument to debt. Derek is more genuine, less performative. They're building a real life instead of an impressive facade. And us? Patricia and I are still in our modest home, living our modest life. But our daughter calls us every week. She asks for advice. She includes us in her world. We matter again. Not because we have money or status, but because we refuse to accept being erased. That's the thing about being a teacher. You spend your whole career helping young people learn difficult lessons. You don't do it by being cruel. You do it by being firm, by holding boundaries, by showing them that actions have consequences. I taught algebra and geometry for 32 years, but the most important equation I ever solved was this one. Respect minus acknowledgement equals distance. Distance plus consequences equals understanding. Understanding plus time equals repair. It took a year. It took patience. It took a willingness to let things get worse before they could get better. But we got there, and that, I think, is what matters in the end. Not the revenge itself. Not the satisfaction of watching Derek struggle or seeing Emma realize her mistakes, but the restoration, the healing, the slow, difficult work of rebuilding what was broken. Some people might say I went too far, that I should have just talked to Emma instead of manipulating circumstances and teaching lessons through consequences. Maybe they're right, but I know my daughter. I knew that words alone wouldn't reach her. She needed to feel the weight of her choices. She needed to see where the path she was on would lead. And sometimes, the greatest act of love is refusing to enable someone's worst tendencies. I sleep well at night. My conscience is clear, because my daughter is happy. My family is whole, and nobody will ever erase us from the story again. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family's success story, if you've ever given everything only to be forgotten, leave a comment below. And if this story resonated with you, consider subscribing. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to accept being erased. And teaching people that respect isn't optional, it's essential.